Beautiful. So welcome everyone. Welcome to Yoga of Birth. I'm so delighted that you are here and that we get to spend this time together, the next couple of hours, diving deep into everything yoga, pregnancy, birth, motherhood related. This first session will be mostly oriented around conception and then rolling into the pregnancy journey. And then next time we meet, which will be in a couple of weeks, we will be discussing the sort of labor and then into the postnatal. So that's kind of how I've split it up. A lot of the information, most of the information that we're going to cover today, you will find in your course portal if you log in and start going through the material. So I know that some of you have already, worked through some of the material, most of the material. Some of you are brand new. So depending on where you're at, you'll know what's in the portal, but it's all there. So by all means, feel free to take notes today if that's your jam. But if you prefer to also just sit back and absorb and listen, then know that the notes are there for you in the portal. So you don't need to worry too much that you'll forget or that you'll miss out or anything like that. I'm imagining that we might have a couple of people popping in a bit late because I sent the wrong link out. So that's going to happen. And also a big warm welcome to those of you watching the replay, because I know that not everyone was able to make it live today. I wanted to start with a couple of just interesting reflection points as I was thinking about this session this morning. A couple of things sort of came to mind that have happened to me recently, and I wanted to share them with you because I think they're really pertinent to this work around birth and birthing, and I'm interested in your reflections about them. But before we do that, I will just ask you very briefly, I don't want to take lots of time for this, but I will just ask you very briefly to introduce yourselves. So just your name, what your interest is in doing this course, especially if there's something specific that you're hoping to get out of the live sessions, because then I can make sure that I cover it. And I'm going to make sure that these sessions are interactive too, so you'll get plenty of time to ask questions as we go as well. But if there's some area that you're particularly interested in, let me know, because I can make sure that I get to it. I'm pretty sure you all know me, but I'm Katie Rose, in case you don't. I am a mother of 5 children. So my eldest is nearly 18 and my youngest is 2. I live in Sydney in the inner west. I've been a doula for just over 17 years. I did my doula training when my eldest was 1. So that's that. And I've had the, very privileged opportunity to be present at many, many births, which has been a great joy. And yeah, such a beautiful thing to do. And I've also been a prenatal yoga teacher since well before I had my own children. I've written a book, The Yoga of Birth, and obviously this training is a kind of expansion of that. What else in the realm of birthing and motherhood? I'll tell you a little bit about my births later on, so I'm not going to go into that now, but of course, plenty to say about that because there are 5 of them, so there's lots of stories there. Anyway, I'd love for you guys to just jump on in, unmute yourselves, brief introduction, and whatever it is, however it is that I can best serve you in these live sessions would be super helpful for me to know. And what inspired you to take the training? Anyone can feel free to jump in first.
I'll go. Hello, everybody. I'm Chelsea Todd, and I'm based in Lachi Lachi country, otherwise known as Mildura in regional Victoria. I'm a mum of 2 boys, 4 and 6, and I have a background in psychology and then kind of had a big career change after motherhood, and I'm now working as a matrescence guide and coach and yoga teacher. And I signed up for Yoga of Birth, I think it was 3 years ago, Katie. And I still haven't actually completed all of the training, but I'm just really passionate about kind of blending psychology, coaching and yoga, and not just like yoga asana. I think there's so much for women in the prenatal, postnatal space that's that real focus on the physical elements, and I'm really passionate about nurturing women in a way that honors that spiritual transformation as we move into and through motherhood. And for me personally, like prenatal yoga was a really beautiful part of that. So yeah, I'm just really, the timing feels really divine as always, just to learn in community and feel inspired, by doing this work, with other women in space together. So thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you. That's so beautiful. And I want to pick up on that point, Chelsea, that you made about not just the physical, because you'll see as you start diving into the yoga of birth training, although we cover anatomy and physiology, we cover safety in asana, all of those kind of good things, and sequencing and what have you. So the physical practice, my main interest is much more around the energetics and the spiritual. That's really where I come from as a yoga teacher. And there's a lot of that content in the training, and we'll be sharing a lot around that in these live sessions. One of the things that makes a huge difference in a woman's pregnancy journey, like this has been proven by so many different studies in so many different contexts, is what we call continuity of care. And continuity of care is a model where a woman receives support from her caregivers in pregnancy from the beginning right through to postnatal. The same person, or the same, I mean, ideally it actually is the same person literally, but at least the same team of people providing that care. And the continuity facilitates many different things. It facilitates a feeling of safety. It facilitates a woman feeling seen and heard, because she doesn't have to keep repeating her medical history or her stories or her wishes, because she's seeing someone who actually knows her. Versus if she has the experience of, for example, every time she goes to the hospital, seeing a completely different midwife and not feeling like that space is being held for her. Now, because the clinical evidence overwhelmingly suggests that continuity of care is important, the mainstream medical system is getting better. There are various different programs and different support mechanisms in place to ensure that continuity of care happens, or at least to do the best that's possible to acknowledge that it's important, and try to facilitate it where possible. And that might be with a team of midwives, but that's better than just completely random turnover of caregivers. And that's also including the actual birthing experience itself as well. There's an acknowledgement now that having the same person hold space for you throughout the birth, rather than like a shift change where your midwife changes, as you're in labor, for example, which is pretty common, is much less optimal. So the reason I'm emphasizing this is because as a yoga teacher or a doula, and this is one of the reasons why I advocate so strongly that doulas are very important, because doulas provide that continuity of care. As a yoga teacher, you might be one of a very small handful, or even in many cases, the only healthcare provider or professional person in the realm of pregnancy that a woman sees from the beginning right through to the postnatal, or at least to the end of the pregnancy. And so you are actually providing a really important role as a yoga teacher in this area of continuity of care, and a thread for the woman to feel that space is being held for her, that she is being witnessed, that someone is walking the path with her. And that's not a small thing. So I want you to really acknowledge that, and know that, as you're creating the classes for your pregnant women and holding this space for them, you're doing a really important job. The other thing is that as a yoga teacher, yes, we can prepare women for pregnancy on a physical level, and we can prepare them for labor on a physical level, and we can support their changing bodies, and all of that is beautiful and important. But also we can provide spiritual sustenance and tools for managing mental health, emotional health in a time of great change, even for women who have really wanted to get pregnant and are really excited about having a baby. There's a huge amount of emotional and mental adjustment that takes place in the pregnancy journey. And as a yoga teacher, we're uniquely positioned, and doulas the same, to really support a woman through those transitions. And we know that yoga has such a repertoire of tools that can support our mental health and well-being and support us emotionally. So again, these are not small things. If we do our job well as prenatal yoga teachers, we're actually having an opportunity to profoundly impact the experience that someone has in their yoga, in their pregnancy and their birthing journey. And I can't tell you how many women over the years, and it's so heartwarming. Like, one of the favorite things in the work I do overall, like my absolute favorite moments, is when a woman goes through a pregnancy yoga journey with me of whatever kind, whether it's through this training or one-on-ones or whatever it might be. Perhaps I've been her doula, and then has her baby and then comes back to me at the end, and I get to meet the baby, even if it's just virtually, and says, oh my goodness, the things you taught me were so helpful in the labor. Like, I've even had women over the years say to me, oh, I could hear your voice in my head. I could hear you coaching me, like, even though I wasn't there. And that's just so incredibly precious and rewarding. So, we really have the opportunity to change outcomes for women. And one of the ways in which we can do that is to give them tools to help them manage their own wellness and their own health. And another way is to open up a world of choices and possibilities for them. It's not our role as yoga teachers to advocate for a particular type of birth or a particular healthcare model, but we definitely can be involved in childbirth education to a certain extent. And I think that's another really beautiful area in which we can offer not necessarily the education, but the doorways to what's possible, which a lot of women haven't even considered. And with that said, Chelsea, do you want to just briefly mention what matrescence is? Because some people may not know. Are you having trouble unmuting? There you go.
Okay, sorry, I've got this is my life at the moment. I've got too many screens open and a sick child at home trying to do all the things. Yeah, I thought that actually as I finished. Matrescence is a word that, like, I didn't know until my second baby was nearly 1, but it refers to the transformation in our identity as we move into and through motherhood. So much like we have the term adolescence that describes that kind of in-between phase between being a child and an adult, matrescence is that growing into becoming a mother. But the difference in matrescence and adolescence is that adolescence has this distinct kind of start and end, whereas matrescence is forever. Like, as we move into different seasons of life as mothers, we are constantly kind of shifting and growing as our children grow. So yeah, and it's something that we look at matrescence in terms of the spiritual, social, emotional relationships. Like, there's so many different components of it that can change at different points, in our journey. I'm being called by my child. So
Thank you.
I'm going to step away for a second. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, who'd like to go next with an introduction?
I will. Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm from Townsville. I did the yoga teacher training course back in January. And then I signed up to do the yoga birth after that. I am here to get myself back into the swing of things because I kind of dropped off the radar there and I haven't done much of the course. I've kind of done a little bit here and there. So yeah, I'm currently 19 weeks pregnant. So perfect timing for getting back on board and doing this course and refreshing my mind and yeah.
Beautiful. And is it your first baby?
I had 2 previous ones that I lost, so it's technically my third, but yeah. First.
At what stage did you lose? I'm sorry for your loss. At what stage did you lose the other 2?
So 15 weeks and 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's a lot. And does it mean that I don't want to put words into your mouth, but have you been feeling anxious in this pregnancy? I can imagine you would have been.
So I did a bit of work around the last one, which was the 15-week one. And I kind of don't have like real attachment to it. Like obviously I had anxiety in the first trimester, just like for the nip test and the first ultrasound at 13 weeks, like I was anxious about that. But as soon as like I was told everything's good, everything's clear, like I just relaxed and let go and really enjoyed like the second trimester so far. And yeah, I don't really have like the big worry in the back of my head of like, oh, what if something happens, like, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But again, like I did a lot of work around, the acceptance and letting go. So
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, well, I'm super happy that you're here, and congratulations.
thank you.
Christina is saying that she's at work, so she can't speak, but she's with us in spirit. Who would like to go next? Jade?
Yeah, happy to go next. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Nice to meet you in real life. I started the yoga of birth training back in February or March, and I have absolutely loved it. I guess my journey with yoga, I've been practicing yoga my entire adult life, and then my own experience of trauma and PTSD about 4 or 5 years ago led me to yoga teaching as a pathway for healing and a way to share those tools with others. So that's kind of what led me into yoga teaching. And then I actually started the yoga of birth earlier this year when I was pregnant. And so I absolutely loved it. But then I ended up having a miscarriage at 3 months. So I kind of stopped it for a while. And then I've recently jumped back into it. And I've pretty much now finished all of the modules, but maybe a couple left. And then I've just got to work through the certification. But I just thought this was really nice timing to kind of help me just get it over the line and finish up the final little bits and pieces. And it's also just really lovely to connect with you, Katie, in real time. I feel like I've gotten to know you so well, but I've never actually met you.
Yeah,
So,
or
yeah.
we're listening to the trainings.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you
Yeah.
for sharing so openly about your journey.
Yeah, thank you, and lovely to meet you all.
I can go.
Thanks, Peter.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for sharing all of your stories, darling girls, and I'm very sorry for both of your losses. I completed my yoga teacher training almost a year ago, and the same I started I wanted to study yoga for my own healing through matrescence. Such beautiful work that you do, Chelsea. Which is so important in motherhood. And I did some training with Yoga Australia with Katie last year, and that's when I signed up for the Yoga of Birth. I live in a really small, remote town in Longreach in Western Queensland, not far from you, Lexi, in Townsville. And I signed up for the Yoga of Birth because there is no support for prenatal or postnatal women in this community at all. We get 6 weeks of midwifery care, and that is it. I have been on the maternity consumer board, and just things sort of start and then they stop. And so I really did this to sort of bring a cert to be of service to the community and just bring something to support mothers through that sort of continuity of care. Like you said, Katie, you explained it really well. So yeah, I haven't started the training. I signed up for it, and I've just been trying to integrate my own yoga teaching. And yeah, I thought this was a perfect opportunity with the live calls to jump in and yeah, do something live and just sort of get the energy coming back again. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It's always so lovely to have you.
It's nice to
You know, I want to say something about this, you know, the getting a training done and not starting the training, which is obviously very common for many people. Like, no one's alone in that. And I know I myself often sign up for online courses and then struggle to actually do them. But what I have found for myself is that when I chip away at it sort of with a little and often type approach, that's when I really make progress. So particularly, well, I was going to say particularly if you've got other things going on in your life, we've all got such full lives. It doesn't matter what you've got going on. Everybody these days is so busy. So my recommendation really is, whether you're here live with me or watching the replay, just do a little bit every day. You know, I will often just put a little earbud in my ear when I'm doing, you know, housework, folding laundry, all the millions of, you know, dishes that I have to do with all my millions of children, all those types of things, and just listen to a lecture. And even if I'm not giving it like my full 100% attention, because I'm doing something at the same time, or I've got kids around, but sort of in the background, at least I'm heading in the right direction of progress, you know. And then if it's a lecture that I'm really interested in, that I really want to sort of give more attention, I know, okay, I can listen to that again and I can sit and take notes and really absorb it properly. But at least I'm doing something, which is a lot better than that feeling of, oh my God, I'm so behind. Oh, I haven't touched it. Oh, I don't even know where to begin, kind of thing. So that would be definitely a recommendation. Or if you're driving, that's another great time to do a bit of listening. So don't feel that it always has to be that you carve out precious time and you kind of sit down for hours and you study. There's definitely workarounds where you can get some study done and still be kind of doing all the things that you need to do in your life. And I really recommend that. It's actually also a much better method of learning too, because when you do listen or study, you know, and the same goes for reading, just a little bit of reading at a time, it goes in more because you keep revisiting the material. So you actually start to really sort of remember. Whereas if you do a big block of time, it can often be like, oh, I know I learned something, but I'm not quite sure what I learned. That can kind of, your brain can get a bit foggy. So that's a study tip. Lucky last for the introduction, Hayley.
Yes, good morning. Lovely to hear everyone sharing. Thank you all. Yes, my name's Hayley. I live Bundjalung country in Grafton on the east coast of Australia. And I am, I'm in my first pregnancy. So I'm 22 weeks and I took liberty in signing up this morning.
Yeah, you
to your
snuck in late
course.
before, like after the cutoff.
I've been getting your emails,
obviously
I'm
meant
like,
to
oh,
be
yeah,
here.
just filtering through stuff, you know, everything that comes in, and I saw it today. I'm like, oh, okay, it's now. And it was just so unlike me to be so spontaneous. So I'm very proud of myself. And yeah, as I'm sitting here and listening to everything and like what brought me here is I teach yoga. I have a studio. I teach every day. I've been teaching for 5 or 6 years now. And yeah, with this pregnancy journey, I'm you know, reading books and taking in information what I can, and I'm trying not to overwhelm myself, I think, is my main objective, and trying to pick information that feels in alignment with me. And your bio, Katie, is that you're a doula, Ayurvedic yoga teacher. I'm just like, yes, okay, this information will support me and align with me. And so that's really helped me commit to this. And I feel really excited. What you're saying about studying and, you know, online courses and that sort of stuff, I totally get that. I've done the same. But I feel like this and being in the right time of my life and the opportunity for me to actually take information in to support myself through the rest of my pregnancy journey and through you know, parenting and becoming a mother. I feel like, yeah, it's really going to be that thing that I will lean on. So I'm really excited for that. And that for me feels really yeah, I'm feeling really positive about it, and you know, I'm really enthusiastic. So that feels really wonderful to just honor that in myself. And I've been looking for support similar to what you said, Peter. There's very limited support here in an alternative sphere of maternity care, and like we've got a hospital. The midwives all seem very lovely, but I'm also like, yeah, there's other ways of looking at this to be more up my alley. So yeah, so that's why I'm here. And then I will go through with the accreditation process as well, because that's going to be something that I can then, once I've gone through my journey and have you know, my baby, and I understand everything a little bit more, I'll be able to offer that as a service for my community. So that feels really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that. Thanks for being here. And I love the spontaneity. I want to say something briefly about whether or not it's essential to be a mother or to have been through the journey of pregnancy in order to teach prenatal yoga and or be a doula or do birth work. And I feel strongly that it is not essential, and I'll tell you why. When we've had an experience of something in our lives, we bring our own personal experiences to the table, which can be really helpful. Like, you know, the fact that I'm a mother of 5, yes, of course, I've got some stuff to share around pregnancy and labor and all of that stuff because I've been through it. And I do think when it comes to parenting, like if I was going to run a parenting course, for example, then I would say that being a parent, or at least having some parenting experience, is probably quite important, because I certainly know with parenting that I've learned on the job. Like, there's no two ways about that. And there are some patterns that happen in parenting that apply across, you know, different demographics, regardless of the gender of the child or the age of the child or what have you. But with pregnancy and labor and that whole journey, it's a little bit different, because every single pregnancy is going to be completely different. And I can definitely tell you that from my own experience. And what happens when we've had 1, 2, 3 babies is we tend, even if we don't mean to project our own experience as the experience. So I can tell you right now, and I'll talk a lot more about this in our next session, but I had 4 amazing, natural, completely unassisted births for my first 4 children. And for my last child, my daughter, which was not that long ago, a couple of years ago, I had an epidural and I had a lot of intervention and a medicalized birth. Now, part of the reason that happened, and like I said, I'll talk about it more next time, is because I was very complacent. I was like, I've done this before. I know how to have a natural birth. The baby's just going to fall out. It's going to be so easy, right? And as soon as you get complacent about something like that, that's often when the universe sends you a bit of a test, you know? And although I'm not delighted that experience happened, as far as doing this work is concerned, I feel like it's actually a blessing in many ways, because it's reminded me that nothing is for certain and that every situation is unique. And so any hint of smugness or I've got the formula and let me tell you how it can be done kind of energy got eradicated with that last birth. And so women who haven't had a child, haven't been through a pregnancy journey, don't come with the baggage of their own, I know what I'm doing because I've done it kind of vibe. I know for myself, when I was doing my doula training originally, like I told you, that was about 17 years ago when my first child was a baby. I was very fortunate to be trained by Renee Adair, who is the founder of the Australian Doula College. She's an incredible woman. She's literally been present at the birth of thousands of babies, and you know, it's her life's work. She's really a wonderful human being. And I remember her, I'm going to say, telling me off. She's a pretty direct personality. Like, she calls a spade, because I was waxing lyrical. I was in my 20s at the time too. And I think sometimes when, you know, youth can bring a bit of, like, I watch my teenagers now and they think they know everything. You know what I mean? Like, my 15-year-old and my 17-year-old have worked everything out. And that's a fact. And that's very much the energy of youth. I hope as we grow older, as I grow older, that I become a little bit more understanding of nuance, and, you know, that things are not black and white. Anyway, so Renee said to me, you know, your experience, your one singular natural birth that you were able to have is not the experience. And also, guess what? You didn't make it happen. So the thing about pregnancy and labor, and to a certain extent parenting, there's an element in there as well, is we get to control the way that we respond to what's happening, but we don't get to control what's happening. We're not actually in the driving seat from the very beginning, from conception, preconception, through the entire pregnancy, through the labor, into postnatal time. There's a lot of things that are going to be out of our control. And most of us culturally at this particular time in history really, really don't like the idea that we're not completely in control. In fact, we're actually quite offended to be told that we're not completely in control of everything. And so what we've done through modern medicine, through science, through the institutions that support us in childbirth, is we've tried to facilitate as much control as possible, so that we don't have to have this uncomfortable feeling of, it's not all up to me and I'm not completely steering the ship on this one. And that kind of works to a certain extent. And it's one of the reasons, for example, that we see the rates of elective cesarean going through the roof, women choosing to have a cesarean rather than birth vaginally, because it feels for some women like there is more control in that choice. They know when it's going to happen. They know what's going to happen. It's not an unknown. And I'm not making any judgment around women that make that decision, but that's part of a bigger picture paradigm, which says, let's find ways to control this thing so that we can all feel a bit safer. And the hospital environment and the medical environment also, it's all about statistics and best possible outcomes, and mitigating potential problems, right? Usually based on statistical analysis. There's very little conversation around, for example, the role of intuition, or a woman being asked what she feels is happening in her own body. It's extraordinarily rare. When we go for an appointment, and this is true of most medical appointments, not just prenatal, but I'm going to say that most times when you have a medical appointment, it's because there's something wrong with you and you need medical attention. Pregnancy actually is a natural event in a woman's life. There isn't something wrong with you, and you don't necessarily need medical intervention. So you might, but just to do a slight tangent, and if those of you who don't know me, you'll know I'm very good at tangents, but I always bring it back. The World Health Organization has some statistics. They're a little bit old now, but they're still very, very valid, which state that in a normal, well, if we take a demographic of pregnant women across the world, right? So this is the species of the humankind. The statistic of pregnancies or labor, birth, that will need an intervention is around, that won't need an intervention is around 75%. So 75% of women having a baby will require absolutely no medical intervention whatsoever. In other words, her body knows what to do. If she's in a safe space and she feels well cared for, she will be able to birth her baby without any intervention. 75%, right? In Australia at the moment, the intervention rate, do you guys know? Raise your hand if you know what the intervention rate is right now. Okay, so Lexi, I'm going to ask you not to answer this question, but those of you who are on live who don't know, pop a number in the chat for me. What do you think the rate of intervention is in Australia at the moment for women in labour, given that the World Health Organization, let's say they recommend that it should be around 30%, because if 70% of people are not having an intervention, then 30% need some sort of help. Okay, so we've got 60, 60, 60, lots of 60s. Peter's much closer to the truth with 85. It's over 90%. So over 90% of women having a baby in our medical system, and over 99% of babies are born in the medical system in hospitals in Australia. We have a very, very, very tiny home birthing culture. There's an intervention. Now, intervention could mean, you know, something very mild. Gas doesn't count as an intervention, by the way. So gas isn't even on that it's not driving that statistic up. It's anything more than gas. So it could be having having some sort of medicalized pain management, like something like an epidural. It could be an induction because the baby's hasn't come on time, or some sort of timing management thing. Yeah, anything more than gas counts as an intervention, and there's lots of different possibilities of what that could be. Over 90%. So what that says, stretch and sweep is an intervention, yes, because that's encouraging you know, getting the baby to come sooner than it would naturally without an intervention. So what that basically says is the paradigm, the medical model that we're working with, which is the model that everyone's working with, because like I said, it's 99% of women that are going through that system, basically says, as a woman, you're broken. You're not going to be able to birth your baby alone, unassisted. And when I say alone, I don't mean without other people present. I mean without intervention. Your body isn't capable. There's going to be all kinds of problems that we've got to manage. It's a situation that needs managing. And here's the important piece. This is where it all comes back to the yoga, where I come back to my original point, right? We will help you. We will fix you. We will get you through this. You can trust us. You're in a system that is going to make sure you're safe. And again, it goes back to this idea of control, right? And I mean that in a positive way, like, oh, you can relax because someone else is in charge, right? So it's sort of this double-edged sword. On the one hand, in my opinion, it's very overly medicalized. On the other hand, we can kind of relax because we hand our power over to an institution or a doctor or a midwife or obstetrician, whatever it might be. And we go, they know what to do. So now all of a sudden this unknown entity feels a bit safer, right? Does that make sense? If we look at a traditional Indigenous model where women would have grown up watching other women give birth, you might have seen your mother give birth to your siblings. You might have watched your sister give birth, or your friend. You might have been present when a local midwife came to the house and supported your friend, your sister, your mother in giving birth, right? Birth, like death, which we've also sanitized, what we've done with birth and what we've done with death sit very closely together, would have been part of your everyday experience. It would have been normalized, right? And in that way, this handing over of power would have been significantly reduced because the autonomy would have been back in your own hands. And if we go even further beyond the sort of Indigenous or what we might call traditional midwifery care, let's look at animals in the wild. We're mammals, right? And if we look at animals and how they birth, we could start with domesticated animals like, you know, dogs and cats and cows, but then we could also look at like deer or, you know, buffalo or animals that live in the wild. And what we see is what an animal does, and almost every mammal is exactly the same. When they get close to labor, is they go to a quiet, safe, low lit place, and they have some kind of guardian, whether it's other females in the species, or often it will be an alpha male, sometimes the father, but sometimes not. Like with lions, for example, it will be the alpha of the pack, not necessarily the biological father of the, you know, the child, the babies. But there's so basically what the female needs in order to be able to birth safely is not too much light, not too many other people or animals around her, and a feeling of safety, that someone else is watching out, right? And then in at least 70%, according to the World Health Organization, of cases, she will be able to birth her baby without intervention. So we've turned the model completely on its head, where we say, you can't do it, but don't worry, we're here to help. Rather than, you've got this. And if something goes wrong, we will be there to help you. But the statistics overwhelmingly tell us that you won't need us. You'll be right. You've got this. Right? So why am I telling you all of this? I mean, part of the reason I'm telling you is because I'm so passionate about it. And I just feel like these are things that we need to, these are sort of frameworks and paradigms that we really need to start blowing up so that women can feel so much more empowered about being pregnant and having a baby. And then that goes into the journey of parenting. You know, for so many women, when they have their first child, and Chelsea knows this in the matrescence world, there's just so much lack of self-trust. We don't trust our bodies. We don't trust our intuition. We don't trust that inner sense of knowing. The internet, you know, is an amazing thing. And none of us would be here right now having this conversation if it wasn't for the internet. But unfortunately, what the internet has also done, the downside, is it's given us this great opportunity to outsource all of our inner knowing and all of our own capacity, because we are, you know, we ask Google everything. And then we have everyone else's opinions into the mix. So part of what I feel is such a powerful journey that yoga invites us to take on as we move through the pregnancy, you know, navigating conception, pregnancy, childbirth, is how can I be radically self-responsible? How can I like really be a rebel, like be an anarchist, and just ask the questions of my own body, of my own intuition, and sit in the center of my power? Now, that might mean that you choose a very medicalized process from beginning to end. I'm not saying that that's in any way wrong. I really genuinely have no judgment around that. What I have judgment around is women being railroaded through institutionalized systems, coming out the other side and literally, and I'm not using this word lightly, literally coming out with trauma, like coming out of the experience of pregnancy and childbirth traumatized, because they have had all their power taken away from them incrementally over 9 months, and then at the end, often in one big event, which is the labor. So if there's one thing that we teach women in our prenatal classes, yes, let's be safe in the asana, and we're going to go through all of that now, but the overwhelming energetic imprint that I really want you to gift your students, and it is a gift that you are giving them as you teach them, or yourself, if this practice is for you, is the imprint of trust your own body. Listen, get to know what's happening. Listen to yourself, follow your intuition. And that doesn't necessarily just mean the biofeedback your body's given you, like, I'm tired, I need to rest. I'm thirsty, I need to drink water. My back is sore, I need to change my position. Like, they're very obvious physical cues, which, by the way, we often ignore. I mean, how often do you need to pee and you just ignore it because you're busy? Right? Am I the only person that ever does that? Like, this is something we often do as women. We ignore our bodies' needs because there's so much going on and life is so busy. But more than that, like, once we start trusting ourselves and we start following our intuition, what that means is, if I go into a medical appointment with an obstetrician or a midwife or a specialist, and I don't like the vibe, right? I don't like the person that's providing me with healthcare. I feel strong enough in myself, and I feel robust enough in my own honoring of my intuition to say, I'd like a second opinion, or I don't want to see that person again, or I don't feel comfortable with what you're telling me. And it's so easy for that not to happen. And what we can really allow our students in our pregnancy classes, if we get really skilled as prenatal yoga teachers, is a constant returning of the autonomy back to them. You know, almost every woman I've ever worked with at some point on the journey of pregnancy has said to me, like, I've heard this over and over and over and over again. Oh, I didn't know that I could request to not blah, 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 blah. Or I didn't know that I could ask to blah, 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 blah. Like, isn't it utterly outrageous that we live in a cultural paradigm where women are literally voicing that they don't know that they feel able to ask for what they do or don't want to happen during the most important event in their entire life? And it's completely normal. We're so institutionalized into this way of thinking that we literally don't even consider that, oh, I could choose not to have this particular injection, or, you know, whatever. It could be, there's, you know, hundreds of different things it could be induced, be in this particular hospital, have this particular obstetrician. You can just say no. And also you can ask for something and actually demand it. And that is your God-given birthright as a human being, as an autonomous woman. But most women go into the journey of pregnancy not feeling that way. And what's so funny, and it's not funny at all, but what's so interesting is it's very often women like all of us who are intelligent, educated. We could advocate if it was one of our children or even our partner. You can bet your life we'd be there advocating, right? But then all of a sudden, when it's ourselves and it's a pregnancy journey, we lose that sense of self-trust. And I did it myself in my 5th birth, even though I've been a childbirth educator, a doula, a prenatal yoga teacher for over 25 years. You know, it was COVID. I had a really overbearing obstetrician. They just read me the riot act about all the risks, and I just buckled. I was just like, okay, I'll have an epidural, whatever you think. And I'm still in shock about it 2.5 years later, that could happen, given all of my background. I mean, my goodness, if that can happen to me, what chance do most people stand? So the biggest gift that we can give our students and ourselves as yoga teachers and yoga practitioners is the gift of listening to our own bodies and being responsive to our intuition and our self-trust. And I don't just mean our physical bodies, I mean our spiritual values, our emotions, our, like, the whole spectrum. Deep listening. And sometimes the yoga class or the yoga practice will be the only time in our entire pregnancy that we get the space for that, because life is busy and there's lots of other narratives going on. So if we carve out that time to be quiet, to be still, to be in self-knowledge, what a beautiful gift we give ourselves. And as teachers, the way that you teach, the language that you use, and the vibration that you give out is so integral in this. So what we really want to be doing is constantly directing our students and ourselves towards self-autonomy, towards self-expression and self-experience, using cues and prompts like, how does this feel in your body? What do you notice is coming up for you now? Where is your awareness being drawn? What's the feeling vibration for you as you're in this posture? These types of cues and prompts invite a deeper sense of self-knowing, rather than prompts and cues that are things like, you'll feel a stretch in your hips here. Because that's dictatorial. That's saying this is what's going to happen for you. I'm in the role of authority, and I'm telling you how this yoga experience is going to be for you. No. How do your hips feel? How you know what's going on for you right now? And another part of that too is also making sure that your students know that they don't actually have to feed back to you either. They can if they want to, but if they want to have a very private and personal experience that's introspective, then you'll hold space for that. Yeah, so I wanted to start with that, and I know I've really emphasized it, but it's quite possibly the most important thing I can teach you about this whole realm of pregnancy, birth, childbirth, and then it goes right through into parenting, because believe me, parenting is a daily process of decision making about how you're going to do things and what you're going to do. And there's a million different people with a million different opinions, and at the end of the day, it's your child and you'll be making those decisions every day. And if you outsource that decision making, at some point, very often there'll be regret. Because unless it comes, even if you make a mistake, if it's come from you, somehow there's an ownership of that. I think the really traumatic thing is when you feel that you've been railroaded. You know, I've had women, for example, I'll give you a really good example, and then we'll move into conception. But I've had women who I've doulaed for who've had the opposite outcome of what they wanted. They wanted a natural birth, and they've ended up having an emergency cesarean, right? And I've seen this go both ways. I've seen this happen where a woman has had that unexpected, unwanted outcome and been absolutely fine with it because she felt that all the way through the journey, she was making the decisions. She felt empowered and she felt supported and she felt listened to. Right. And then so the emergency cesarean happens and she's like, you know what? I'm at peace with it. It was the right decision. I received good care. I made the decision. And then I've had other women that have had experiences that really aren't that different to what they wanted in their birth plan, but all the way through felt disempowered, felt not listened to, felt ignored, felt that they were being treated like just a sort of number or a nameless, faceless body. And at the end of the birth, it's really traumatic for them, not because of the outcome, but because of the way that they've been treated throughout. And so as we go through this journey of sharing yoga with the women that we're blessed to work with, we've got an opportunity to really help them step into the center of their own power. And it's not about outcomes. It really is about the journey and the feeling state throughout that journey. So I want to, with all of that said, backtrack right back now to preconception and conception, and we'll go from there. Hi, Melissa. No worries. Come in and out as you need. Does anyone have any comments or questions based on everything I just said? I'd love to get your impressions. And one thing I will just say quickly before I invite you to speak is I really, really welcome healthy, constructive disagreement. So if you have a different perspective or it doesn't align, I'm so happy to hear that and for us to have a conversation in which we share different perspectives. So please don't feel that you only have to speak up if it's because you're going to endorse what I've said. I'm also very happy to hear, other positions. Anyone, comments or questions? How did that land for you? Chelsea.
Hey, Katie, I just want to say, I feel like excited, emotional, like so much as I'm sitting here in this space. And it just affirms why I do this work. And I know why all of you are here today. But as I said in the chat, I think it goes back to even like that handing over of our power and our inner trust can go back right even to, and I know you've talked about this in the Yoga of Birth course when I did it many moons ago, even our own menarche and how we experience that rite of passage into womanhood. But yeah, certainly for me as a woman who experienced like early pregnancy loss and difficulty conceiving, I can see how there was so much giving away and like really resisting it. But like my own partner was like, no, just listen to the doctors. Like, and so, for me, I was really grateful to have two beautiful birth experiences. And I felt like, damn, I earned them because it was a hard haul to get there. But then like you shared, like the level of intervention, the trauma that so many women experience, it's really heartbreaking, like so I just want to say how grateful I am that you have this course and that, to be here today. I feel like, and to be in the space with women who are pregnant, like that just, I just think that's so special. And that you're doing this work while you're carrying your babies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chelsea. Anyone else?
I think the part of the control, like the discussion about control, is like really like resonated with me, because like if you think about it, we really like don't have any control, and it's like lots of people think that they do, and yeah, the hospital system is all about control, and giving you a false sense of safety. And yeah, I just think, yeah, that was a great topic to touch on and resonated with me. And then the trust piece as well, like that's huge. I mean, the control and trust piece kind of go together, don't they? Because it's like, well, if you trust, you'll let go of control. So yeah.
In order to birth our babies without intervention and safely, we have to be feeling safe in our nervous system. Like that, literally physically, your cervix will start to close and you will be unable to birth your baby if you don't feel safe. Because in the wild, as animals, if a predator comes along when you're birthing your baby, they can smell blood, your birth will stall in order to save you and the baby until you find yourself in safety again, and then you can birth. I mean, eventually there comes a point when the body will just override because the baby has to come out. But it's a natural part of our biology that if we don't feel safe, the cervix stops dilating. And then we go to have our babies in, big institutions with bright lights and people that we don't know coming and going and lots of noise and being asked lots of questions. And is it honestly a wonder that our cervixes stop dilating? Because it's like, even if you don't feel actively unsafe, you probably don't feel as relaxed as you would, for example, in your lounge room at home.
There's actually studies out there that say that bright lights can slow down contractions, and that it can be used as like if you went into early labor, light exposure can slow down labor. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these things are getting better. I have to say, in the last 10 years or so, many hospitals are becoming much more aware of things like continuity of care models and optimum conditions for labor. It is slowly changing, but the intervention rates are still crazy. So it's not, yes, there's some change, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Let's talk about conception. So I want to talk specifically about the yoga asana practice and the conception journey. And just a reminder that all the notes for this, including some diagrams, are in your course portal. So please, again, feel free to take notes, but don't worry if you don't get all this, because you've got it there in your portal in Yoga of Birth. So a lot of women who are already practicing yoga want to get pregnant. Okay, let's say that you're a woman who is ready to have a baby and you're wanting to conceive and you've already got an established yoga practice. First thing to know is that not all yoga, asana, physical yoga, is going to be conducive for supporting conception. Okay, and this is really important to know. So for example, getting very hot, overheating, is really contraindicated in terms of optimum fertility and conception. So one of the first things we want to take off the list if we're trying to conceive is hot yoga, or even like yoga in a hot room, but also just even doing like a dynamic vinyasa practice where you're sweating a lot. We actually want to keep the body temperature fairly regulated and fairly cool while we're on the conception journey. Now, obviously, there's lots of we know that the basics that around things like nutrition, making sure you're getting lots of vitamins and minerals and eating well and getting enough rest and all of those types of things to support the conception journey. But what can sometimes happen, and I've seen this over the years enough times that I think it's important to speak to it, is that the yoga practice can be impacting the likelihood of conception, or the likelihood that conception becomes a viable pregnancy. So when we're on a fertility journey, there are two really important parts to the fertility journey. The first part is conception, meaning sperm travels down fallopian tube, meets egg, and conception takes place, right? Now, statistically, what we know is that conception is often not the hard part. Conception is often, even for people who are experiencing fertility challenges, conception is usually not the most difficult part of it's medical terminology, and I don't like it because I think it sounds awful, but a viable pregnancy. What happens after the conception, once that egg has been fertilized by the sperm, is it travels back down the fallopian tube and embeds into the uterus. And it's this process of embedding into the uterus that then starts to create you know, the what will become an embryo and a placenta. That's actually the most vulnerable phase in the pregnancy. So it's this really early stage that's incredibly vulnerable as to whether that implantation into the rich lining of the uterus takes place, and whether it then continues, like the cells continue to multiply and an embryo starts to be created. Now, most women don't pay very much mind to what they're doing in that initial first 2-3 weeks to a month, right? It's sort of like, oh, well, I'm just waiting to see if I'm pregnant. And they continue on doing the same yoga practice, the same fitness regime, could even be drinking alcohol, you know, in larger quantities, whatever. What we know is that in that window of time after ovulation, after potential conception, and before you're either going to have another period or confirm that you are pregnant, is absolutely critical in the viability of the pregnancy. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you and say, if I am working with a woman who's on a fertility journey, like she's really trying to get pregnant, I recommend absolutely minimal yoga asana practice between potential conception, which is ovulation and intercourse, and then confirming the pregnancy, because it is such a vulnerable time. I wouldn't be going to the gym. I wouldn't be doing a vinyasa practice. I wouldn't be doing Pilates. I would just be really honestly doing a lot of resting and a lot of prayer, meditation, yoga nidra, chanting, all the things to just call that baby in and allow the womb to become truly receptive. I remembered I was going to tell you a couple of stories at the beginning of our session, and I totally forgot because we got into introductions. But one of the things I wanted to say is that recently I ran a training for a yoga teacher training group, and it wasn't a prenatal training. It was a yoga asana training for yoga teacher training. It's just a couple of weeks ago. And we did an exercise where we were kind of scanning through the energy of the body, and it happened to be all women. And it was quite a large group. It was about 30 women in the group. And I asked them to give me a single word to describe what was happening energetically in different parts of their bodies. So the first part was the crown of the head. And lots of women used the words like buzzing, light, chattering, like a lot of activity up here. Then I asked them to give a word to describe what was happening in their feet. And we were sitting with feet, or sitting or standing. So feet were on the ground. We were earthing. You know, we got words like grounding, steady, connected, these types of words. Then I asked these women to give me a word to describe the energy around the womb area, right? Random group of 30 women. I was so shocked and surprised at the words that women used. Several women used the word quiet. Many women said empty, like several women said empty. And then a lot of women said nothing, like the word nothing. I feel nothing. So they feel everything up here. There is a sense of connection to the earth down here. Womb area, quiet, empty, nothing. We're completely disconnected. So before we even get to conception, before we even begin to think about conceiving a baby, can we just wake up our wombs? I know that sounds incredibly woo-woo, but I really mean it. Like, can we enter into this portal, which is capable of building a human being? I mean, if that's not magical, I don't know what is. Like, there is a part of your body, an organ in your body that can create a human being. It's pretty bloody amazing. And yet the words that women are using, and I know it was just one group and it was just one time, but honestly, it really stuck with me. Empty, nothing. There's a problem in our society. There's a problem in our culture. And, you know, there are reasons why the conception journey is so difficult that are physical and to do with, you know, hormones and to do with all sorts of different things that are happening with our health. But I honestly also believe a lot of it is energetic. We're not fully in our bodies. So, you know, I run a membership program. Some of you are in it, Bhakti Club. And one of the things that we do in Bhakti Club, it's a group for all women, is we do a lot of womb yoga. We have practices around really connecting to the energy of literally your uterus, and like, how do we connect in? And if it is empty and if it does feel like nothing, how do we awaken that energy? And what even is your womb energy? You know, is it tough and powerful and strong, or is it soft and receptive, or is it, you know, like, what do you even want it to be? And there's no correct answer to these questions. They're just questions of curiosity. But what I do know is if the feeling is empty and nothing and numb, basically different words that mean numb, then there's no prana. That doesn't describe something that's animated with prana for me. So yeah, that's something I just want to kind of throw out there. There's a very, very powerful book, which is recommended in your resources in the portal. It's called Yoni Shakti, by a woman called Uma Dinsmore Tully, who's absolutely brilliant. You can follow her on Instagram. And basically her life's work is awakening the womb. She does a lot of what, she's a yoga teacher. She does a lot of work around pregnancy yoga, postnatal yoga. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman. And that book really asks this question: what on earth is going on energetically for us in the realm of reproduction? And it's a really powerful book. So if you're wanting to conceive, in that window after ovulation and before you confirm the pregnancy, deep rest, particularly no twisting. When you're not pregnant, your uterus, your womb, is about the same size as your fist, right? And it sits in your pelvic bowl, very low down. Like, most people think their womb is a lot higher up than it is. It's actually protected by your pubic bone. So it's quite low down in the pelvic bowl. It's protected by the pelvis. When you take a twisting action, if you're not pregnant, what happens is the uterus, it's very, very filled with circulatory blood. So obviously when you're in your menstrual years, when you're in your fertile years, the uterus also fills up with menstrual fluid that then gets released, right? When you have a period. But I'm not talking about that menstrual fluid right now. I'm talking about circulatory blood that moves through your whole body. The uterus is very viscous, like it collects a lot of circulatory blood, and it's nourished by that blood like every other organ in your body. So when you do a twist and you're not pregnant, it's literally like imagine the uterus is like a sponge or a dishcloth that's full of circulatory blood. When you twist your body, and I'm talking like a deep Ardha Chandasana type twist, is like you wring out that dishcloth and all the circulatory blood gets squeezed back into the circulatory system, reoxygenated, re-energized, filled with prana. And then when you come out of the twist, a whole load of new circulatory blood comes in, rich in oxygen, and energizes, fills with prana the womb, the organ of the womb. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So twisting as a preconception practice when you're not past ovulation, so you're not possibly pregnant yet, is a brilliant practice to do. You want to be doing deep twists every day to get your uterus really juicy and prana filled and ready, right? As soon as you've had intercourse and ovulation has occurred, you stop with the twisting, because as the fertilized egg travels down the fallopian tubes into the uterus and starts implanting in the uterus lining, the last thing we want to be doing is wringing at it like a dishcloth. We leave it alone. It's tender. It's like a souffle. You don't keep opening and closing the oven door, right? You just leave it, let it be. And then we can confirm the pregnancy. And actually what happens is, as you get more and more pregnant, you get more and more robust in the pregnancy. So there's this myth in yoga asana and yoga teaching for pregnant women that says, oh, you really only need to modify it towards the end when you're big, right? Your body does the modification for you at that point. Good luck doing Paschimottanasana when you're 8 months pregnant. You can't do it. So your body is telling you everything to do by then. But in the beginning, especially, and I'm going to talk about this because it's really important, especially if you're a little bit disassociated from your body, which most women are, your body isn't a reliable source of biofeedback. So although I've said, trust your intuition, trust your inner knowing, we can actually only trust our intuition and our inner knowing when it comes to our bodies after we've done a little bit of work to actually be in our bodies. It's a similar thing for diet, right? If you are addicted to junk food and sugar and soda, and I say to you, I want you to eat what your body naturally guides you to eat, right? Just eat what you feel intuitively is the right thing to eat. You're going to say, I want Big Mac, I want a Big Mac, and I want a large Coke. That's what your body's guiding you to eat, right? Because you're addicted to, and not just physically addicted, but also conditioned to that way of eating. And you're craving it. It's a craving, right? You can trust your body's intuition. If you eat a very pure, sattvic, healthy diet, and then you suddenly one day wake up and you start craving spinach, 100% go ahead and trust your body's intuition. But you got to start with a clean vessel in order for that intuition to be valid. Otherwise, it's just craving and addiction. Similarly, with our bodies, if we give our students the instruction, trust your body, first of all, we've got to be embodied. So when I guide my students through a yoga nidra or a meditation or a visualization practice like I did the other day, and I ask them, tune into the energy of your head, we've spent time there. We've slowed down. We've actually gone into a mode of inquiry. And then the words that I'm getting are very accurate: overwhelmed, busy, chatter. It's the chitta vritti, right? They can feel it. They know it's there. Most of the time you go through your life, you don't feel that. You're just getting on with life and kind of dealing with it, right? Likewise, the connection to the earth. When I ask them, what do you feel? Because we're actually grounding, we're feeling our feet on the earth, then they feel connection, grounded, because the body is so wise. We don't need to give it a long time for it to really tune in. But for the womb, for most women, there's such a deep disassociation that we first of all have to do the work of finding the connection, and then we can start to honor that connection. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. And Melissa's saying, I wonder if this potentially could be used around menopause, addressing the lack of connection. 100%. There's a teacher who I absolutely love. Her name is Jane Hardwick Collins. I recommend her work very, very much. And again, even if you don't, sign up to do a training with her or anything like that, you can just follow her on Instagram. She's brilliant. She makes the connection between, and Chelsea mentioned this earlier, between your very first period, the first time you ever had a menstrual cycle, and what that looked like in terms of how you were held in that. Did you feel safe? Was it painful? Was there someone you could talk to about it, etc., etc.? That journeys into your experience, and the energetic imprint of that first menstrual cycle journeys into your experience of labor. So those of you who are pregnant right now, part of your healing work and your preparation for a good labor is going to be looking at that first menstrual cycle and clearing out any demons or any discomfort around that. And then from your labor experience and your first menstrual cycle combined, you walk into your menopause experience. So if you had a highly medicalized puberty and or labor, and by highly medicalized puberty, one example of what happens a lot there is that young girls have painful periods or discomfort with periods, and they just get put on the pill straight away. So immediately, guess what? Disassociation. What medicalized contraceptive does, pharmaceutical contraceptive does, it disassociates us from our hormones in our bodies. It's another mechanism that leaves us feeling disassociated. So that into a labor, then you take it into the menopause. And that's why many women, when they come into menopause, straight away, they want hormone replacement therapy, because everything's been medically managed all the way through. Why would I stop now? At some point on the journey, dropping into actually feeling what's going on, even if what's going on is traumatic, is going to be of deep service to us. And here's the thing, right? We know from the Me Too movement that most women, actually, more women have been sexually violated in some way than not. And there's a huge spectrum there. It could be from quite mild through to very extreme. That experience, whatever your experience of sexual violation has been, even the most mild, right, is going to be triggered in your pregnancy and childbirth journey. If you have been touched by a man in a way that you didn't consent to or you didn't like, or even that you did consent to and you didn't like, because many women have consented, but not, I'd say most, I know I've done it, where you consent to a sexual interaction, but you're not really in it, right? That's the same as being in a hospital environment where you consent to an intervention, or having a pap smear where you consent to having a speculum inserted in your vagina, but you don't really want it. It's the same feeling. So what does your body do in those moments? It goes into a constriction. It goes into a response. It goes into whatever protective mechanism it went into when you were touched in a way that you didn't like, or spoken to a way that you didn't like, or your nervous system closed down. Is this making sense to everybody? So this is what, I mean, I know it might not feel relevant to like back bending or like, should I be doing, you know, a headstand, or, but this is like the most relevant thing I can teach you. This is truly the most powerful work we can do in this area. When a woman comes to your yoga asana class, or when you yourself practice yoga asana in pregnancy, this work of coming back into autonomy with your body is the most powerful work that you can possibly do. And it will be, you will feel it in every area of your life. You will feel it in your own experience of being embodied. You'll stop being disassociated. It might feel uncomfortable. This is why a lot of people come to yoga and then leave very quickly, right? Aren't you surprised when you teach beginners? I mean, I'm not anymore, but I used to be in the beginning when I first taught beginners. Oh, I started with 15 people in the class, and it's a 6-week course. And by the time I get to week 6, I've only got 5 people in the class. Am I a crappy teacher because 10 people didn't come back? No, you're not. It's just that 10 people are not ready to experience their embodied selves. They're just not ready. And it's okay. It's the culture, the world that we live in. And honestly, it's getting worse. Like, I don't want to be negative, but all the time we spend on computers, all the time we spend distracting ourselves, we can't be in our bodies for a minute. It's really hard for us. And we're now teaching our children the same. So as we do this work and we drop into our bodies, let's just start with, pregnant or not, what's going on in your womb? What do you feel? And if it's discomfort, and here's a very important key in your teaching of prenatal yoga, preconception yoga. If you're feeling discomfort in your body, what tools do you have to be able to sit with that discomfort and work through it, rather than, as Melissa said in the chat, just band-aid it? Can you work with your breath? Can you work with a visualization? Can you work with the prana flow and the energy and redirect it? in order to begin healing rather than just ignoring or band-aiding or distracting. I can't tell you how many women I've worked with, it would honestly be hundreds by now, who've been on a conception journey and being really struggling to conceive. And when they start doing this work, conception happens. Because it's like we're trying to get pregnant. You know, the analogy I think of in the scriptures, in the Ayurvedic scriptures, the analogy that's given around a woman's receptivity and readiness for pregnancy is ghee that's been kept very cold or warmed up, right? So ghee, like clarified butter, when it comes out of the freezer or the fridge, it's like you can't even get a spoon in it. It's so rock solid. That's what our wombs are like when we're holding trauma, when we're holding the energy of having been violated and closed down. We've got to warm the ghee up. We've got to melt the ghee so that we can be ready to be receptive to conceive, that we can create. Your womb is going to become a home for your child. And so we've got to find this softening. We've got to find this slow, gradual melting, like the ghee that just becomes soft and malleable, and you can easily scoop the spoon in and it's like nectar. And this is what the yoga practice is all about. Now, the trouble is that sometimes the way that yoga is being practiced in our culture at this time is push harder, do more, get a result. It's actually the opposite energy of what we need. This is why the womb yoga practices are so incredibly beautiful. But slowing down, connecting, working with the breath, yin yoga, restorative yoga, these are the nourishing things that we need as women to prepare for the conception journey, along with whatever support we need to truly process and release any negative experiences from our first menstrual and puberty journey, and or any experience of violation that we've experienced, and not doing that thing of minimizing where we go, oh, well, you know, what happened to me wasn't that bad. Worse things happened. I'm okay. No, really working through it and releasing it. And actually part of that is saying, you know what, it's not okay. I'm okay, but what happened is not okay, whatever that is. Even if it's just a look, even if it's just a comment, anything that leads you to that feeling of clenching and closing and violation, no, zero tolerance. I'm doing a poetry class at the moment with an amazing woman. Her name's Chelsea Diane. I'm just obsessed with her. And she teaches each month. I can't recommend this class enough if you're interested in something completely unrelated, but not unrelated. She teaches a different class each month, and it's not really about writing the poetry. It's just about celebrating women. And she highlights a different female poet and talks about them, and then we write like based on, you know, that, like whoever it is. And one of the ones that we did recently was Artemis, which is the Greek goddess, also known as Diane. Artemis famously had a bow and arrow and basically just shot at any man that she didn't like the vibe of. This is a woman goddess, half human, half divine, in touch with her womb. Definitely not feeling empty or numb or dead in her womb. And she was particularly, Artemis was particularly not into sexual predators. Any man that had raped a woman, even thought about raping a woman, looked at a woman in the wrong way, any of it, just instantly bow and arrow, annihilated. This is the energy that actually facilitates conception. Because you know what it is? It's the energy of protection that we actually have for our children. Once you've had a child, if you've had a child, you know the energy I'm talking about, that energy of don't F with me. Like, we'll take it for ourselves, but can you imagine someone in any way, sexual or otherwise, violating one of your children? Like, that's true, that's Artemis energy, right? But somehow we don't apply it to ourselves. We make excuses. I'm okay. Oh, it's fine. It was a long time ago. It doesn't matter. No. You are your own child. This is the other story I wanted to share with you. I'm going to have to pop up in a minute and get a battery for my laptop. But the other story I wanted to share with you this morning, right at the beginning of our session, was another group exercise I was doing. And actually, I was a student in this class. I was taking an Ayurveda class recently with a brilliant Ayurvedic doctor in America online. And she started the class by asking us all to write a list of all the people that we take care of. So she gave us a few minutes to do this. And she was like, I want you to really dig deep. You know, okay, you've got your kids, you know, you've got maybe your parents, you've got your pets, but I want you to keep going. Like, who else do you take care of? Who else? Who else? Who else? So we're writing this list, and kind of thinking about, you know, different people, what have you. And then at the end of it, she said, okay. And again, there's like, well, there's quite a few people. There's maybe 50 people on the call. She said, raise your hand if you've put yourself on the list. Like, honestly, 5 women out of 50 raised their hands for, I had myself on the list of people I take care of. Because we just don't think like that. We immediately think, oh, my children, my pets, the neighbor, you know, my mum's friend, like, and we're not even on the list. It's crazy. So this is the work. This is the yoga. It's like, how do we prioritize ourselves? How do we caretake ourselves? How do we break the intergenerational trauma that's held in our wombs because this work hasn't been done for generations? How are we gentle? How are we kind? How are we radically self-responsible? It's all part of the same thing, and it leads us right through the journey from conception through to birthing. Give me 1 minute. I'm going to grab my charger, and then I'm going to open up for general questions. We didn't go through as much of the individual asana considerations that I wanted to, but it is all in the portal, and I'd actually rather use the time we've got for you who are live to actually have these conversations. So just give me 1 minute. Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts, observations, anything anyone would like to share or ask?
Hey Katie, it's Christine here. I can't put my video on, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I just managed to catch the tail end of this conversation and it sounds amazing. So I can't wait to go and listen to the whole thing. But I've got one of my really close and dear friends is pregnant with her first baby. She's 37. And she is experiencing like she calls me sometimes and she's just extremely overwhelmed. She says that, you know, she flies into these rages and she's quite confronted by the massive emotional swings that she's experiencing, especially with her partner. And it was interesting how, you know, you were talking about how our past sexual traumas is all of that is going to be triggered in our pregnancy. And for her, I mean, she's got the awareness, like she knows that it's a lot of abandonment stuff that's being triggered for her, because her dad left the family when she was a 6-month-old baby, and so she knows that she's like projecting this onto her partner, but she just feels almost powerless to be able to kind of catch herself, and it's obviously leading her into like real panic about how she's going to cope when the baby is here. So I've been trying to, and she's also a yoga teacher. She's got a lot of awareness. She's done a lot of healing herself. But I guess if you could just offer me some wisdom to kind of just be able to hold space for her where she's here and kind of just soothe her. I feel like I keep telling her that it's just the season she's in, she's just in the season. It's the hormones. But yeah, I'd love your wisdom.
It's a beautiful, powerful question, and it's relatively common actually. So not necessarily the rage element, but the acting out towards our partners whilst pregnant element. And what we know is that when there has been any kind of trauma or challenge or overwhelm, the people that we most commonly act out with are those that we are closest with. Like a very simple example, my third son is dyslexic. He has a lot of problems with reading and writing. And as a result, a huge amount of frustration. So it's much better now because we've worked through it in a lot of different ways. But for quite a while, he would go to school, be perfectly behaved all day at school, but building up frustration throughout the day because of the challenges of reading and writing, and then come home and be just impossible, like tantrums, crying, completely overwhelmed, behaving appallingly, right? And then I'd say to his teacher, this went on for about a year, I'd be like, how's he going at school? He's dreadful at home. She'd be like, oh, he's as good as gold. Absolutely perfect. And it took me a while to realize, okay, he's just safe with me. He doesn't feel embarrassed. He's not having to self-edit. He's just allowed to, let it all out. And in some ways, so then, then the next step was, okay, can we find better ways to deal with this? I can see that there's a lot of frustration and it's really difficult for you. And how can we channel this better rather than just tantrums and meltdowns? So similarly for your friend, I think one of them, because she does have such a high level of self-awareness. I mean, she's aware enough to know what's going on. And then second of all, she's aware enough to reach out for support. And she's reaching out to someone who is the perfect person to reach out to. So, she's switched on. She knows what she's doing. She's asking the right people for help. Let's say that.
Cool.
So the first thing would be, I would recommend to her, I actually don't, Christine, I don't recommend it's just this season, it will pass narrative, because it's really easy to just not deal with it and it'll just keep resurfacing. It will stick around if she doesn't actually do the work now to figure out what's happening. This is a beautiful opportunity for her. And by all means, show her this recording. This is a beautiful opportunity for her to exorcise this demon, So the first thing I would do if I was her is I would talk to my partner and I would explain what you've just explained and what she has awareness around. I know that at times I'm taking stuff out on you that is not your stuff, and I'm sorry. And I'm trying to work through this. And can you please be patient with me and hold space for me? And I also do understand that it's having an impact on you. And I acknowledge that, right? So she says that she has that conversation at a time when it's not heightened, when she's not in the argument. And what is then really helpful, if he can, and it's, he's human too, so he might not be able to, but when in those moments she's in that rage state, if he can hold really loving space for that, because a loving response is what will diffuse it for her, because she'll just remember that she's safe. Same with my child. Like when he's having a big tantrum, I'm pretty disciplinarian as a parent. Like I don't put up with a lot. Like I'm actually pretty strict. But when he was having those tantrums after that, those frustrating days at school, actually what I did was give him a lot of love and a lot of patience and hugs and just letting him work through it. And that's kind of what her inner child needs. She needs the reassurance. So having that conversation with her partner would be a really good step. I would also honestly recommend some therapy so that she can work through the rage, which is anger is always a secondary emotion. It masks something else. So anger is always grief or sadness or abandonment, or something is under the anger. And sometimes we live in the anger for a very long time before we figure out what's underneath. So therapy can be really helpful for finding the grief, finding the sadness, and whatever's underneath her anger, her rage. It can also be an injustice if there's been, often with a sexual assault, and you're saying for her it's more abandonment as a child, but anger can also be overlaid over a feeling of injustice, you know, or a feeling of being powerless or violated. So whatever's underneath that, she's got to dig in, and not, you know, she's like a universal archetype for most women. Like most of us have been here at some point. And do the work, dig it out, and figure it out. And everyone will have a different methodology for that type of work. So for me personally, I find writing and journaling and talking are the ways that really help me process, particularly journaling. So I just, you know, do a lot of releasing, stream of consciousness, write it, burn it, write it, bury it, write it again, you know, put it in the ocean. Just that's my method. For some people, it might be, you know, it could be exercise, might be running, going to the gym.
Yeah.
It might be going for a walk. It might be art, painting. You know, everyone's going to have their own method of release, but she'll figure out what that is. And then at some point, if she does all of those things, she'll come out the other. And some of this is hormonal, of course, but you know, all your hormones really do is heighten whatever's there. It's not that the hormones send you doolally and you're suddenly a different person. They just make you a little bit less socially appropriate. No?
Yeah.
It's true. They do the opposite of what mental health medication does. You know, like antidepressants, and I'm not speaking against antidepressants or mental health medication because it's often needed. Please know that I really believe that. But what they do is they put a lid on things a little bit. And it's like, you're a bit too much. The lid, come on, let's pacify you a little bit. A bit numbing, right? What hormones do in pregnancy is the opposite. It's like the opposite of an antidepressant or a pharmaceutical, you know, a medication. It's like,
Yeah.
it's all coming out now, right? And some of the social filters go. And so it's not that she's suddenly become really angry. It's that she's processing whatever she's been processing for her entire life. And now it's coming out. And what a beautiful opportunity to do the work of releasing. And Chelsea says it so beautifully in the chat. I see pregnancy as a time when, like during our bleed, the veil is thin. It brings to the surface what's longing to be witnessed and nurtured.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and I feel like that's definitely true for her. And I can also see she's got such a beautiful partner. Like, men that are this self-aware, really, and willing to be vulnerable are rare. Like, he's a gem. But his shit is being triggered by her rage. And like you said, he's just not able to meet her there as that, like, as the riverbed while she rages, you know? And I think that's what's tough.
Yeah. So she needs to try to find other places that she can have that outlet. So it's not all on him. And keep having the conversations with him. And it will pass. You're right to say this too shall pass. It is a season and it will pass. But it's also very important, while it's surfacing, what do you do with it? Do you just do nothing and wait for it to pass? Because guaranteed it'll come back up again at some other point. Or do you use this opportunity now to work through it?
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a beautiful question.
Thanks, Katie.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to really Thank you, Katie, and because I have done a lot of the course, I have seen it come up many times in your videos, but just really how you're really focusing on this concept of choice, and like women regaining their power over their body, over their experience, over their situation. And this is, for me, ultimately, this is kind of the core and the foundation of this work, particularly because I'm exploring kind of work between, you know, prenatal as well as trauma-informed yoga. For me, I have a 6-year-old son. So my first pregnancy was, although the birth went really well, there was a lot of trauma surrounding it because I was in a family violence situation at that time. And so a lot of my work has been, over the last 5 years, like reclaiming my empowerment and my choice, and something that's just really keeps coming through for me through all the yoga trainings I've been doing in my trauma informed and in this prenatal training is really just that, like, if we just break it down to like the fundamentals of what we are providing as a yoga facilitator, is really just creating a space where women can feel safe to tune into their bodies and the data that their bodies is giving them, so that they can make a choice based on that data. And so I really just wanted to thank you for just for that message, and for really allowing that message and that theme to kind of filter through all of the training and the whole course. So yeah, really just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you for getting it. Thank you for receiving it, because I
Yeah.
feel that it is the most important element of this work. I really do. And it's the difference between yoga and, you know, like a stretch class or a Pilates class or a, you know, any other modality. And I'm not saying those things are bad, but like we have to ask ourselves, what really is yoga? And yoga, the word yoga means to connect, to combine, to unite, to bind together, right? And the first part of that project is connecting the different parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
We talk about connecting our breath with our body, that's vinyasa. Connecting our mind with our body, that's meditation. These are all the different elements of yoga. Mind, body, breath, emotions, when they all come together, then we start to feel like a cohesive human being, right? That's true yoga. But then there's even a stage further, which is our connection to the divine, to source, to God, to whatever you want to call it, universal consciousness, something bigger than us outside of ourselves. And I feel that the journey of pregnancy and being a parent is equal part the project of me bringing all the different parts of myself together and doing that inner personal growth work, and surrender to that divine bigger picture. And that's where the lack of control part comes, because you can see the not being in control as a curse, which is what our society more often than not does. It's like, we're going to try to create control out of this situation, like around childbirth, or let's say death. You know, we're going to try and figure out when we're going to die, or stop death, or not age, you know, not let our bodies age, or that kind of mentality, like control. Or you can enjoy the beautiful relief of surrender. Oh, it's in God's hands. You know, that word, that Sanskrit word swaha, which I come back to time and time again, which is, you know, I'm doing my best and I give it all over. I hand it all up. You don't know what birth you're going to have. You don't know if you're going to have or maybe you do know if you're going to have a boy or a girl, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what type of child you're going to have, how the labor will be, whether everyone's going to be healthy. I mean, one thing that having 5 children teaches you is to let go. I remember my mother saying to me, and this is such a terrible thing, and I have really spoken to her about how appalling it was to say this to me. God bless her. When I got pregnant with my 4th child, because she was like, you should stop at 2. She was very anti big family for various different reasons, most of which is her own projection. But when I got pregnant with my 4th, she said, you are asking too much of God. Something's going to go wrong. You've had 3 healthy children. You've got a good life. Your kids are all healthy. Why tempt fate and have another child? It's asking too much. And she really meant it. Like, she was filled with anxiety that I was just pushing my luck with life, you know? And thank God, my fourth child's perfect. Everything's beautiful. But had it not been, the point she was missing is actually what being a parent teaches you, is that you're not in control of any of it. One child, no children, 10 children. We're not in charge. You can't play a lottery and say, well, I'm only going to have 3 kids because then everything will be okay. It just doesn't work that way, you know? And so when we can be okay with that, that's the true yoga, that we're resilient no matter what happens. That my 17-year-old's driving around in a car now, and I'm like, oh my God, is he going to have an accident? Is he going to drive too fast? Is he, you know, being sensible? I can't control it. I have to let it go. My 2-year-old's at daycare. Is she okay? Are they going to change her nappies? Will she have a nap? Does she miss me? Is she crying? Gotta let it go. It begins before you even conceive your baby. And it keeps going forever, I now realize. For as long as I'm in this body, I will be worrying about my children. And knowing ultimately that I can't control what happens to them. And that's the yoga. Do I become a neurotic mess? Do I try to control everything? Do I, you know, or do I learn it's in God's hands? It's not all up to me. All I get to choose is the responses that I have. And there's such a relief in that. To me, that's a relief. It's not, I don't feel scared because I don't have control. I feel great relief. Thank God, literally thank God, I don't have to figure this all out. What a relief. I get to just relax, you know? We've got it all wrong. We're like, oh, we've got to figure it out. We've got to control it because it's unknown and we don't feel safe. It's like, no, what if you just completely surrendered into being unknown and not feeling safe? What would that be like? It's a totally different paradigm. So yeah, thank you for seeing that in this work and then hopefully sharing it with others and this ripple effect starts to take place.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Question or sharing?
I will chime in with a short share, just in reciprocating of everything you've just said. So it's I feel like this is also appropriate for what I'm going through and where I'm at, like the control and the processes I take myself through, the conversations I have with myself about what birth is going to look like, what my child will be like all of this is all just so new, and I'm processing it in a way that feels really organic. And it's like yoga has definitely got me supported, like all of the knowledge I have and all of my practice so far. And it just feels like, yeah, I am taking it in my strides. Everything you're saying is very appropriate for me to help me reiterate that storyline. Because there is, before now, like I was so full of fear. I didn't want a child. I had this whole other belief system around pregnancy and even just being a human, you know, being part of the problem and all that sort of narrative around reproducing and reproducing and stuff. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful to witness my own process and the shift that's already taken part just by allowing for it, allowing for my body just feeling into this newness, this whole different time and opportunity for it to come, allowing for that. And so, yeah, it's, since you've been talking, it's like the visions of me perhaps having a home birth have come into my field, like that sort of thinking. I didn't allow for that a moment, like really, I was like, meh, you know. So there's like these little things that are just like, yeah, I feel like it's really, I'm really in the right place. So appreciate everything you've already shared this morning. And it's just, yeah, it feels really great to, again, be part of this. I feel like I've made a really good life choice to support my process further.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, so just, yeah, thank you. And exactly, I just want to say what Chelsea said, that it brings to the surface what's witnessed and nurtured. And I think that self-trust in me has been longing to be nurtured. It's like, just trust my intuition. Yes, what is calling me in? What am I not aligning with? Like really just listen to that and just allowing for that process to become more of the guide rather than people's input and information and stuff that's so much, you know, there's so much of it everywhere, and just, yeah, learning to listen. So yeah, appreciate it. And again, just super grateful. So yeah, thanks everyone.
You. Can I ask you a question? And you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but I'm just super curious. Was there like a turning point for you where you really felt that shift in attitude that you just described? Like, was it one event, or was it a gradual evolution? Like, how did that, because it's a radical change that you're describing. How did that happen for you?
It's, I think it started, I was doing a course. I remember when it started, I did a permaculture course at a yoga center in New Zealand, and it was this whole attitude of understanding the whole entirety of life rather than just my life or human life. Like, it was like this whole interconnectedness was displayed in a different way, and feeling it was gradual from then. Like, I remember thinking, oh, I was aware of my block, or I became aware of the negative or that fearful narrative that I was living. And so that was in 2016. So
Wow. Big
so it's been a
journey.
gradual thing. I only started to really, yeah, I only wanted to become a mother maybe 12 or 18 months ago. Yeah. So that was like, and I'm 38 now. So it wasn't like, it was just a gradual thing of constantly just yeah, slowly unveiling, slowly opening up more and more, understanding our roles as humans, understanding the animal, you know, that we are all animals, and the whole bigger picture. And again, surrendering to that, not thinking that we have to, that we are the center of it and that we understand it all, and, you know, like really understanding that we don't.
And
that
that's
has
lovely.
probably the crucial
That's
part
the
of
relief.
it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. I
Yeah.
feel like you just really reaffirmed the point I was trying to make. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you.
And I can't tell you to have a home birth, but have a home birth.
Thank you.
Yeah, my second child was a home birth, and I honestly don't know why I didn't just keep going with that, especially with the last. I genuinely, there were very few things I regret in my life, like genuinely really actually have the feeling of regret, but not having a home birth with my last child is definitely one of them. I'll take that to my grave. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's really yeah, if you can do it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, ladies. Oh, what a beautiful session. Thank you for being willing to go so deep, and yeah, just be so open. And I love these conversations. And I feel like this is exactly what I wanted the live stuff to be about, like us sharing and kind of embodying and discussing the material that you'll get to go through in the training that, you know, gives you all the sort of structure and support and form that you need to teach. But this is the energetic imprint behind that, and actually so much more important than how you sequence a class and what asana you choose and how. So yeah, thank you for being here. And as I redevelop the course, which, as you know, I'm doing now, one of the reasons why I took the course, why I've retired the course in its current form, is because I actually want to reinvent it with much more of this type of work in it. So I'm still really feeling through what that's going to look like and how it's going to be. But whatever it is, you guys will have access to it. So you've already got that now, like whatever the new incarnation of the training looks like. But I feel like it's going to be a lot more around this sort of, I'm calling it energetic for want of a better word, but this kind of psycho-spiritual energetic part of the pregnancy journey, because yeah, it's the part that is really alive for me, and also the part that I see as being the most important because it's the most impactful in women's lives. It really is. It takes it from being a yoga class on a Tuesday evening to the thing that made all the difference in my birthing experience, mothering experience, embodiment as a woman. You know, like it's a totally different way of thinking about what yoga is and how we share it. So thank you for being here for that ride. And as you know, I'm off on holiday next week, so that was unexpected and exciting. So I've changed the session time. We're not going to be meeting again this time next week. We'll be meeting again this time in 2 weeks on a Wednesday. So I will send you the reminder email for that, but there was a time change. So if you didn't get that memo, it's in your emails. Thank you. Have a beautiful week. See you all soon.
Bye.